My name is Charlie Nye. I am the beekeeper here at the bee research facility, and I'm in charge of kind of keeping things running here, from the beehives to also helping the students to do their experiments on the bees. So on a normal year, I'll run about 70 to 100 hives that I have to take care of, and also help the students to do their research.
My name is Claudia Lutz. I am a postdoctoral fellow at the University of Illinois, and I recently graduated with a PhD in neuroscience in Gene Robinson's lab.
I'm Gene Robinson. I'm the director of the Institute for Genomic Biology and a professor in the entomology department and the neuroscience program.
Bees are really important for a couple of reasons. One of the big ones is the range of things that they help to pollinate, both kept bees that are managed by professional beekeepers and also wild populations of honeybees and other types of bees. Huge percentage of the produce that we eat needs to be pollinated by honeybees or other pollinators, and that's not something that human beings could really do on their own. There's no replacement for those insect and a few vertebrate pollinators to help us produce the crops that humans need to survive. And apart from that, there are many products that honeybees produce that we also use and enjoy using and to some extent rely on. So
I actually didn't have a lot of interest in working with honeybees when I was younger, and I remember I knew a beekeeper when I was a kid, and I didn't care. So when I came to college, I was taking classes here at the University of Illinois, and I took Maid Berenbaum's Insects and People class. On one of the classes, she brought us out to the bee lab, which was in a different location at that time. But I saw this person interacting with the bees, and I remember I saw Karen Pruitt, who used to be in my position and turned out to be my beekeeping mentor, standing in a flight cage and was just completely surrounded by bees and wasn't wearing any headgear or anything. They were flying past her, and I was amazed at that. And I at the time I was kind of interested in ants and their eusociality, so it was a very short jump to start reading up on bees, and that's kind of how I got here.
I wanted to study honeybees because I felt comfortable studying insects. My mother was an entomologist and studied insects, so I've always really enjoyed them. And honeybees, compared to a lot of other insects, are easier to manage in a lot of ways because they have been domesticated. They also just have a really cool range of behaviors that interested me personally, including their strong learning ability and their ability to communicate with each other. And getting free honey from our lab was definitely a perk.
I got interested in working with honeybees a long time ago, before I started college even. I was 18 years old, and I was working on a kibbutz in Israel, which is a communal agricultural settlement. And they asked me to help out with bees one day, and I did, just thinking it would be a one-off kind of thing, and I was smitten from the first day. I was just completely taken with the combination of chaos and order that one sees when there are literally millions of bees around, with the chaos reigning supreme initially, but then once one peers a little more carefully, starting to see the beginnings of the tremendous order that governs the bee society. So that got me hooked on those very questions, the organization of the society, and then as I've developed my research program, going from a kind of gee whiz, isn't that amazing, to trying to understand how the honeybee society evolved and how the mechanisms in the brain have been shaped to support such an intricate society. So what's special about honeybees is that they are eusocial. Eusocial is considered the highest and most extreme form of social life that's known on the planet. Eusociality is defined by three terms. First, there's an overlap of generations, so individuals from 2 or more generations living at the same time. Secondly, there's a cooperation for taking care of the babies, cooperative brood care. And then the third and most extreme trait is that there is a division of labor for reproduction. Some individuals reproduce and others don't or hardly at all reproduce. So in the honeybee case, there's a queen. She's like an egg-laying machine. She lays 2,000 eggs a day for a period of up to 2 years, up to as many as 2 million eggs. She reproduces, and the worker bees don't reproduce. They take care of the queen, they take care of the baby bees, they collect the food, they build the hive, they defend the hive, they do all of the things that are necessary for the society to flourish, but they don't reproduce. So an extreme difference in reproductive output. So those 3 traits define eusociality.
Bees to me, and I think a lot of beekeepers, they find the bees very interesting from kind of a humanistic standpoint, because they move through jobs so kind of quickly through the course of their life that they'll only live a month, but they do jobs for short periods of time and then they change, and kind of no 2 bees have the same path. So while there seems to be, we look at them when we have an idea that at 5 days, the first 5 days they're going to be doing this, and the next 5 days they're going to be doing this, and it's all, it seems kind of cut and dry when you look at it on paper, but if you follow the life of a single bee, they all have very, very different jobs that they do. That some of them might be a guard where they sit at the entrance and watch for any sort of trouble in front of the hive, where another bee would never have done that job in their life. So they have a sort of individuality inside the hive that is it's something that you can miss if you just think about them as all the bees are doing the same thing.
Bees have a lot of different behaviors, and one way of breaking them down, first of all, is according to what type of bee you're looking at. So in a honeybee colony, there are 3 different types of bees. There are queens, there are drones or male bees, and there are worker bees. A common misconception is that queen bees are in some way controlling the hive or making decisions or telling worker bees what to do. They don't do that. Their only job is to lay eggs. The drones or the male bees are also very one note, so their only job is to grow up, get big and strong, leave the colony, and go on mating flights and try to mate with a virgin queen. Once they've accomplished that, the act of mating actually causes them to die, so that's the one major event in their life. If they go through an entire season and they don't successfully mate with a queen, the worker bees, who see them sort of correctly as useless if they haven't mated, will kick them out of the hive in the fall and they'll freeze or starve to death.
Bees have a set kind of program that they follow where they're born, they come out of their cocoon inside the hive, and up until that point they haven't been doing anything on their own. They've been sitting in their cell and being fed by their sisters up until they just sit there and they don't move, and that's kind of strange for an insect, because a lot of insects have to and when they're in their larval form they have to crawl around and find their own food.
So a young worker bee, when she has just emerged as an adult from her cell, will immediately start looking around and finding empty cells that might have debris in the bottom, and she'll start cleaning out those cells to get them ready for having a new egg laid in them or having honey or pollen stored in them. As she gets a little older, she'll start expanding her repertoire a little bit. A really common behavior for her at that age would be to start nursing or taking care of the larvae or the baby bees inside the colony, checking on them, making sure they're okay, feeding them with regurgitated nectar as well as special food that she secretes from glands inside her head. Bees at this age will also start taking care of the queen, so they form what's called a retinue or a cluster around the queen and make sure that she's getting fed if she needs to and taking care of her, and also receiving pheromones or chemical signals from her body and then helping to spread them around the hive to signal to other bees that the queen is there and that she's okay.
And another job it might have is to collect the food that's coming in from the foragers and to distribute it inside the hive so that it's in good locations to feed to the larva also. So it'll go through forager, which is one of the last life stages that it goes through, and this is it kind of makes sense that it's the last life stage because it's probably the most dangerous, where they're out flying around and they have the most chance of being picked off by a bird or something like that.
Final task that most bees perform in their life is actually foraging, so going outside the hive and searching for flowers that are a source of pollen or nectar, or looking for water or something called propolis, which is a sticky substance that some plants produce that bees use to stick parts of their hive together.
And one of the most interesting jobs, though, I think, is undertaker, which is the oldest bees in the hive. They will pick up the dead bees inside the hive and carry them out and drop them.